this week, just getting back from the mission field, Costa Rica. Wow, what a great time we had. What a great experience we had. We want to take a few moments in this service and share some of the neat things that God did in Costa Rica 2020. I'm going to use a few verses out of the book of Nehemiah in just a moment. But God assembled an incredible team together for this 7 days that we were gone to Costa Rica. And team is a good acronym for what we really found as our motto this week was together everyone achieves more. Isn't that true? Together everyone achieves more. That's what a team is all about. And this team was united in a divine cause to make a difference to a group of people that it's virgin territory. There's been some gospel work there, but we were able to add to what some missionaries have already done there, and it was an incredible experience to partner with some missionaries to the Nobe people in a little part of Costa Rica that you're going to hear a little bit about. But I want you to meet the team. In fact, why don't all the missions team from Costa Rica 2020 come on up here, join me on the platform, give them a hand as they come. Amen. Yes. And while they're making their way, let me just share a few photos with you. Costa Rica is an incredibly beautiful country. It's now one of the vacation capitals of the world for sure. It's just a gorgeous place. And we went from the coast all the way inland into the mountains. You can see how beautiful it is, and it's filled with all kinds of unique animals. We had monkeys all around us, howling monkeys in the morning, waking us up. That was really an incredible experience. A few of these crawling around, which freaked some of us out, but interesting. And then we got within arm's reach of one of these creatures, a sloth. Look at that. Isn't that incredible? It didn't move. Or it moved very slowly. But that was incredible. And not only is the country beautiful and what we experienced physically, but the people are so beautiful. The Nabe people are amazing. They got beautiful hearts, and they're so open to the gospel. They welcomed us in. We were able to come into their village and just help them in the project that we'll be talking about in just a moment. I think really what captured our heart were the children. Isn't that the way it is? Children just kind of grab your heart. They were so precious. They were all around us. They were working around us. They were bringing their pets and chickens and everything around us. The roosters really bothered us in the morning early, sometimes all night long, right? And the dogs barking. It was kind of hard to get some sleep now and then. But not only those animals, but we all found our own little comfort animals as well. Brianna, she took a liking to all the animals for sure, and each one just stole our heart. Even Don got in on the action. But the children were just amazing, and we were able to improve, actually, and you'll hear about it, tear down their other facility and build them a new children's church. And we'll show you pictures of that in just a moment. But the missionaries that we worked with were Tim and Nicole Strange. And Nicole is Iva Sugart's daughter. Iva, why don't you just stand, wave to everybody so people can recognize you. Her daughter, Nicole, and son-in-law, Tim, are doing a great job. They are great missionaries. They have hearts of gold as they have just committed themselves to these people. Tim, every week, is going way back up into the mountains to reach people, groups that don't have churches, and he's preaching the gospel. He's starting churches, and it's just an amazing story. And we got to partner with them in the area called La Casona. And it's the Nobe people that live there. And so about a little over a week ago, we left early on a Saturday morning. Here's the team that assembled. That's our lobby right out there. And we were not sure what we were getting into, were we? Hey, why don't we grab the brown and the orange mic, turn it on, and at some point when you find a spot to jump in here, let's do that here this morning. Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness, you did. Isn't that beautiful? Yes. Yeah, that's so cool. So we got on the airplane and flew to Costa Rica. One of the neat things was getting to know each other. I realized how much this shepherd did not know his flock in the way that we did. And it's one thing to speak at you, to preach at you, and I don't mean that. I don't like to preach at you, but you know what I mean. But it's one thing to work alongside. And all of us, we got to know each other. That was such an amazing experience. We had a lot of laughter, a lot of fun, a lot of joking around, teasing each other, but that was all part of it. One of the first things we did when we got there was we had a church service, and I said, you know what, church family, we need to sing. And so we started the first ever Celebration Missions Choir.
We said we're a construction.
That's right. We didn't even we had one rehearsal, and that was on the bus on our way to the church service. But we picked a song that is easy to learn, and one of the neat things that we would do along the way, Don brought a bunch of tennis balls from one of the tennis clubs in the area. They gave free tennis balls, and so we took them, and the kids absolutely loved them. So every child we'd pass as we were going on the bus, the bus driver would slow down, and out the window we'd toss some tennis balls, and they loved that. Just getting a simple tennis ball brought so much joy to their hearts. And so that was one of the fun things that we did on our way to that church service, but experienced. And so I want to grab a few verses out of that great book. Nehemiah was an incredible leader. And one of the things that was so great about Nehemiah was his compassion for the broken down walls of Jerusalem. He had compassion. And oftentimes, that's what drives us to obedience, to do God's will, is the compassion. We feel something. We sense something. It's something God begins to stir in our heart, but compassion alone isn't enough. You got to do something with it. And so when you couple compassion with cooperation with others, that's what's required to carry out God's will. I mean, you know how important compassion is. Many of you support different ministries, different organizations. The commercial comes on and you're crying and you want to give that $19 a month. But my $19 to the Shriners or whatever it is, I mean, those commercials just rip us apart. They're so wonderful, the great service that they do. But my $19 alone isn't really going to make a difference. But if you add your 19 with my 19 and your 19 and your 19 and we cooperate together, then you can do so much. If I would have went down there just by myself to preach the gospel to the No Bay people, probably, a good sermon, a great experience, but they're going to forget me in time. But because we all went down there and we put brick and mortar together and we built something and actually built something for the children that will last for generations. Wow, together everyone achieves so much more, and that's what teamwork is all about. And Nehemiah, he's a great example of leadership. He's a great example of a man of God. He was the advisor, the cupbearer to the king Artaxerxes in the Persian Empire, and he had a lot of trust from the king, so he was a cupbearer. He'd drink the wine first so that the king wouldn't get poisoned. That's what the cupbearer did. And he was an advisor to the king, so the king trusted him. Even though he was a Jewish man, he was from a whole other ethnic background, the king trusted him. And Nehemiah had incredible leadership ability. He had it all. He was devoted to prayer and fasting. He was a great admin, organizational kind of person. He was an eloquent, inspirational speaker. He could rally troops together, mobilize people together to do something big. He had a deep faith and confidence in God in spite of opposition, in spite of criticism. How many know that's where many of us get off? We jump off the bandwagon is when we face opposition, when we face criticism. Most of us want to throw in the towel or quit, but not Nehemiah. He was so decisive in his response to problems. He didn't waver. There's a lot to live up to when it comes to leadership with Nehemiah's example. Now, I look at my own leadership as a pastor. I don't have it all together like he does. I'm not a very good admin kind of person, organizational. That's not me. I've got other strengths and gifts. In fact, I was talking with somebody from our church just 2 weeks ago And they were saying, Pastor Mike, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. I like to get my hands on a lot of different things, and the board's constantly saying, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. You just get up there and preach and disciple and do those things. We'll handle all the rest, and those are good lessons to learn. But Nehemiah, he had it all. he had it all. He was kind of like the James of the Old Testament. James talked about, faith without works is dead. I mean, it's great to have faith, but if you don't do something with it, it's useless. And that's what Nehemiah had faith, but then he had the ability to do something with it. So a quick review before this team jumps in and helps me preach a sermon this morning. Nehemiah was, again, he was a cupbearer to the king, and at that time the Israelites had been kidnapped by the Babylonians and taken to Babylonia, and that's where they were slaves. They lived a difficult life for many, many years. They were allowed to be set free. They came back to Jerusalem to find that the walls around Jerusalem were all broken down. The temple was a mess, and that touched Nehemiah's heart. In fact, Nehemiah found out about it. One of his brothers came to him, and so Nehemiah asked about the Jews who had returned from their captivity about how things were going in Jerusalem. And so they said to me, things are not going well. Jerusalem's a mess. Look at all the trouble and disgrace. The walls are torn down. The gates have been destroyed by fire. And so when Nehemiah heard this, it says he sat down and he wept. In fact, for days, he said, I mourned, I fasted, and prayed to the God of heaven. Isn't it great to experience when you take that time to pray and to fast? God speaks. Many of you have incredible miracles as you started this year, fasting and prayer, and you heard some great things that God spoke to you about. That's what Nehemiah did. That's what made him a great leader. It wasn't because he just did everything on his own. He heard from God, and God put in his heart. God stirred compassion in his heart to go back and help his people in Jerusalem. But what happened is God spoke to him, but he didn't tell everybody right away. He kind of held it to himself, and sometimes that's good to do because we can blab it to everybody, and it's good to do what Nehemiah did. He just held it in his heart for a while, and then after he fasted, he prayed, Lord, please hear my prayer. Please grant me success today by making the king favorable to me. That's what we did before we left on this trip. Many of us fasted and prayed for this trip, and we knew that we needed God's favor to get this job done, and you'll hear some of those stories here this morning. So what Nehemiah did then, after he heard from God, he prayed, God gave him a plan, so he went to the king and said, King, I got to go. I know I've been serving you, but I got to go and help my people. And the king actually granted the request because, again, the favor of God was on Nehemiah. And so he goes, and the first thing he did was he inspected the walls. He went there for himself. He put his eyes on it. He inspected the walls, and sure enough, he said, we're in trouble. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed. Let's rebuild the wall. So he rallies a team around him. Together, everyone achieves more. That's what team is. So he put a team around him, and in 52 days, I'm going to jump ahead in the story. 52 days, they rebuilt those walls. Do you guys remember when we first pulled up onto that little church in La Casona, the condition of the building? You remember that? This is what it looked like. This is where the children would meet. And what would happen, it was so dilapidated that you could karate chop, kick, or karate, do both, whatever. Any one of those beams coming down, and they were so dry rotted, it would just collapse, that beam. So what we did, we tied up a bunch of ropes on the front of it. We got in front of it like a bunch of mules, and we actually pulled that building down. That's how bad a shape it was. It was broken down. And you remember doing that? Wasn't that something?
The family of bats that were living in there were not happy with us, just to let you know.
That's true.
But they didn't bother us at all. I think they'll find a new home here soon.
Then there was a set of bathrooms that, you can see how rough shape those were, and so that was part of the project. This is what it looked like together, both of them, children's building, and in the bathrooms. But we weren't. We took one look at it, and it looked bad. But look at Earl, man. He was just so resolute on getting this job done. Hey, Earl, you just jumped right in. Where's Earl? Okay, he was in first service. Okay. Yeah, some of the team was in first service, and now this is the second half. But so we tore down that building, jumped right in, and started. They saved everything. Every piece of wood they saved that was good.
Yeah, I mean, the wood you see there is basically when we took apart the old one, and some of those wooden slats were used for forms when we poured concrete. Our intention was to save the entire fencing that was around the exterior, but it was just so bad we ended up purchasing new. But they literally use everything for one fashion or another in the future. They will save it and use it for something.
So we took it all the way down to the existing foundation, but we found out how crumbly that was. So we basically had to rebuild the foundation, which meant hauling in a lot of stone and dirt and sand. And I mean, these ladies that were on the trip, they are hard workers. They jumped right in, and they did whatever work was needed. Now, some people kind of slept on the job, but we had to haul bucket after bucket after bucket of stone and sand, and found different ways of doing it, working together, and took it to a cement mixer. Just jump in anytime you guys feel like it, all right? Maybe I should pause and let you guys jump in, right?
Well, just to back up for a second, when we were on our way down there, the building was supposed to have already been torn down whenever we got there, and so we got on site and it was still standing. The locals were supposed to have taken it down. They never got around to it. It turns out most of the men in that congregation were actually still out picking beans, so they never got around to tearing the building down. So we were a little behind already with timeline and everything. And it turns out that when we tore the building down, here the entire foundation was just rotten and it was no good. And we actually had to rebuild pretty much from scratch the entire thing. But this team was not discouraged, and I just want to say that we were so far behind when we got there, and nobody was discouraged. Everybody just said, "Let's get it done," and we did.
At points, we were like wondering, are we going to finish this? It took us time to get started, but once we just kept, the shoulder to the wheel, things came together. We had a cement mixer. At first, we weren't sure we were going to get a cement mixer. We're going to have to mix it all by hand. That's the way we started. But then, fortunately, God provided a cement mixer for us, and that helped us continue on and get it done.
What the women
Yeah, sure.
that picture.
Yeah. The Nome people are very traditional, conservative. The men dress as Pastor Mike is dressed. The women are still expected to wear the traditional dress that Connie has on down there, because the expectation is that they aren't, I don't know if subservient's the right word, but they're not at the same level as men. So on the first day, I was the only female, I believe, the only female outside helping with tearing down the building. Everyone else was inside prepping the room, getting ready to paint, and doing all the work that needed to be done in there. And the Nobe men that were there did not like what I was doing at all. As soon as I picked up a board, one of them would run over and take it from me and carry it where it needed to go. As soon as I picked up a hammer, I was with the pastor, I was hammering out some of the nails from the boards we were tearing down. He would come over, push me aside, and pound the nail. So I would just go to the next nail, and he'd push me aside and pound the nail. And pushing the wheelbarrow, a man would run over and push the wheelbarrow. And that was my entire first day, and we were really trying to decide, are they trying to be helpful, or am I offending them? I wasn't sure, but I needed to do my job, so I just kept going. Second day, more women joined me outside. They continued to try that for a little bit, but the longer that we went, the longer that they saw that we were working, the more they were willing to work with us and partner with us and help carry the things with us. And actually, Diane, who's not here right now, she's a powerhouse. She is an absolute powerhouse. And
I couldn't keep up with her.
no, she's a powerhouse. And the pastor, by the third day or fourth day, I'm not sure, one day she picked up one of these buckets, which were 80 or 90 pounds is what you said, and we carried those a long distance. She picked up a bucket, and the pastor looked at me, he tapped me on the arm, And he pointed at her and he went, with a great big smile on his face. So we just watched the evolution of you can't touch that to wow, look at these women go. So
There was one other thing she forgot to mention. It wasn't just the men down there. The pastor's wife was watching for a whole day until she finally decided she could jump in and help too, and actually helped carry the buckets. She would jump on the other side of the stick to help carry the buckets too, and she just looked so proud when she came around the back of the church with you guys.
and actually, I think it was by the last day. They don't treat animals the same way we do here. The dogs really roam around and they just eat whatever they eat and maybe get some scraps or whatever. But we
Skin and
were
bones,
kinder
really.
probably to the animals than they wanted us to be. But the last day we got there, next to last day, the dog that had befriended us the most had actually laid in chicken poop and she was just covered and nobody wanted to touch her. So Bree went over and started washing her and I thought, oh, how's this going to go? Because I know that this isn't how they treat their animals. Well, the dog didn't like it a whole lot and started to run away. The pastor's wife chased the dog for Bree to catch her, to bring her back to get her finished washed. It didn't work. The dog was gone, but
Nehemiah, when he separated the groups to rebuild the walls, there's like 40 different family groups. He assigned each family to a section of the wall, the part of the wall that's in front of your house. So you're going to take care of it. You're going to build it well, right? Well, I've never seen such a collaboration and a unity of our team just working alongside each other. And it says fathers and sons and fathers and grandsons worked together in Nehemiah's day. Well, we had a couple father and son connections on our team. And first of all, Dan and Shane Albert, they've done mission trips before, but what was it like to work alongside each other?
We didn't. Yes, we were on probably 10 or 12 trips together, and it's very rewarding, of course, to be able to go with your family. And, of course, I taught him all he knows, and still don't know anything.
He taught me all he knows. I learned the rest on my own.
Anyway, we weren't on the projects together. He was more on that bigger building, and I was on the outhouse building. And Earl and I, which Earl isn't here, of course, we were accused of taking the doors off and putting them back on about a half a dozen times, but that's because he had the hinges on upside down once, and then I had the hinges on upside down once. Of course, you have to submit the plans again to the architects and so forth. Fortunately, there's no codes there. But
And you guys milked that the whole week long. You worked on those same doors from...
well, when we got there, we had made a little deal that we would make this last for 4 days, and we did. There was also plumbing to do inside, though. That they weren't working bathrooms when we got there, but when we left there, they were. But to get back to your original question, yes, it's very rewarding to be able to go with family member. Very proud of my son as to how he's able to lead and be able to show real insight on how to build, and the construction went real well, along with the team that just made it all up. Our hosts and hostesses, we couldn't ask for any better leaders. It was a great, awesome trip, and the 10 that I've been on, it's just getting better all the time.
We had another
It's been
father and
very
son.
great.
Yes, amen. We had another father-son connection. Evan and your dad, Mike, were on the trip. And what was it like having your dad and working alongside him?
It was great. I mean, my dad would cut stuff, and I'd bring it over, and we'd lay it out. We were kind of like the layout crew. So, me and my dad get along pretty well when we're working together. I mean, he's a little particular sometimes, and we kind of butt heads sometimes, but I've learned to get over that. But he was always there to be like, oh, that's an inch off, or
He was a shop teacher at CV,
yeah.
and so he would always keep everybody square. You got to be in
Yeah.
square,
Yeah,
but that doesn't always work on the mission field.
No, and we got it done, and it was a great experience, and I know it'll be there for a long time for those
As we
kids
talked
to
in
have
first service about Evan being a professional welder, didn't mean to jump in there, but little quick story about how he got to go on the trip. Shane.
So I'm the one that's tasked with all of the construction aspect of these construction trips. So I was in contact with the missionaries down there, mostly Tim, asking him what kind of projects we'd be doing, what tools we needed, and that sort of thing. And he kept telling me there's a lot of welding to do. And I kept telling him, I don't know if we have any welders that are going to be going on this trip, so we can do a lot of stuff. Welding isn't really one of them, but we'll give it a try. He said he could, maybe find some locals or something. And so it came time to have one of our first meetings and see who showed interest, and Evan showed up. I didn't know Evan, so I introduced myself to him and asked him if he had any construction background. And he said, well, I can build most anything, but I'm actually a professional welder. I said, man, you got to go on this trip. Because I do believe that God puts exactly who is needed on these trips. And Evans was just glaringly obvious to the rest of us, although everybody, I'm sure, did exactly what they were supposed to do. But Evan was definitely a huge help to this particular project.
Now, I took this picture, and if that doesn't make you want to go on a missions trip right there, look at that palm tree in the background, the beautiful weather.
Ken Kemper was on the trip here too, and he's got a flooring business back here in the States. And here he wasn't working on the floor at this time, but then we needed the concrete finishers, and I thought it was really neat. You worked with one of the Nabe people. There was a language barrier, but there's Ken working with one of the men there from their people, and to see them communicate. Oh, go ahead, Claire.
That was one of the neatest things to me, was we worked alongside of the Nobe people, and even Tim and Nicole don't speak that language. So most of the Nobe do speak Spanish, not all of them, but regardless, Tim and Nicole couldn't be everywhere. So to watch all week the communication that happened without words was amazing to me. There was fairly frequently some puzzled looks on people's faces, but we continued to plow through until we made the point. My favorite story, if I can tell Mark's story really quick, he laughs at me. He doesn't think it's as funny as I do, but when the dump truck came to drop off all of the stone and sand, the driver gets out and Mark goes over, and the driver's talking to him for a while, and I was off in a distance, so I couldn't hear what he was saying. And Mark responded and was having a conversation. The driver talked a while, and then Mark responded. And then Mark came over to me as the dump truck driver got back in and moved the truck and dumped the stone. I said, oh, that driver spoke English. And Mark said, not a lick. They had an entire conversation. Nobody spoke one word that was like, and the stone landed exactly where it needed to be. So it was just fun watching how that happened.
And in Nehemiah's day, it said not only the fathers and sons, but the fathers and daughters actually built the wall. And Claire mentioned how a little bit of the cultural difference was they didn't want women doing any of that stuff. And we tried to tiptoe, sensitively around that. But they just jumped in and did all kinds of things. And there was a lot of painting that was done on the inside of the existing church. They even painted the outside of the church. Everybody just found a role and jumped in, and nobody stood back. And when you go on a missions trip, it's a lot of work. And it's summertime there, and it was really hot. So we worked hard from sunrise to sunset, and everybody jumped in. Even the national people, they jumped in. Even the kids. And again, they just steal your heart. They grabbed a bucket with a towel and began wiping down the walls so to get them ready for the ladies to start painting. And Betty Kemper, she was painting the shower. There she is, Betty. You want to say anything? No. And then then Dieta, she brought, you didn't bring your sewing machine. They had one there, but tell a little bit about what you did. Somebody get her a mic.
Well, when they said we were
It's on.
Is it on? Okay. When I first heard about this trip, I've always dreamed of going to Costa Rica since my daughter, who's a missionary, was there for a few years. And this came up, and then they said, oh, it's a construction crew. And I thought, I don't think I can do construction. But as time went on, they talked about painting. And so I did a lot of painting. And then before I had left, I had talked to Nicole, and I made crocheted baby hats, dish towel, tops, dishcloths, And she said the ladies love aprons. They always wear aprons. So I made those things before I left, and I made about 60 bean bags, about so big for the kids. So we shelled some beans, and they had some others already shelled, and we put them all in the bean bags. And then they had a sewing machine, and so I was able to sew them up. And the couple of the kids were in the house. This was where we stayed, and they just loved those things. So that was some of the things that I could do besides the painting, but I just wanted to say the energy that I had, I know was supernatural, because usually at home I'll be outside a little couple hours and I'll have to come in and stay in for a little while and whatever. And we all took short breaks, but I think I kept going. Dan and I were the oldest ones, and we just kept going, pretty much like everybody else did. So I would just encourage you, no matter how old you are, that it's just a wonderful experience. And I just really enjoyed the team, and I was amazed at how, yes, everybody worked together so well, and everybody just found a place to be. We weren't sitting around doing nothing. We just all had our jobs. So that was really special to me, and to get to know half of these I didn't even know before. I hadn't seen them, I don't think, at church. So that was exciting.
And everybody brought an extra suitcase filled with school supplies and toys and games and all kinds of things. And they put a nice backpack together. And then when all the kids walked through the line, just the joy on their faces to receive things that oftentimes we take for granted just really made it all worthwhile.
By the way, that's where your money goes for these projects that we do, the banquets and the missions meals. All that money goes to buy the materials and stuff for these projects that you were on. And we're very thankful for all of you for your help in that. And by the way, that banquet's coming up soon. I'm going to plug in here, see non-Karens for your tickets, and that money will all go toward helping with these projects. Thank you.
So we went ahead and put up the steel structure. You can see that happening there. Needed everybody's expertise. Then a couple people got on the roof in the hot sun and laid the sheet metal down. And there's a miracle story that goes along with that. Somebody going to share that?
We had, just to kind of give you a little, I don't know, this always goes through my mind. We're going to a different country, to people that we've never met before, and we're tearing down their church. I mean, imagine if somebody said, we're coming from Zimbabwe, and Pastor Ben and Beth, we're going to come rip down your children's church. But trust us, in 3 days, we'll have it rebuilt. You're like, yeah, right. So there's a lot of trust that these people are giving us to do that, and we want to make sure we do it correctly. And the missionary has to set all this up before we get there, and he has to take measurements and figure out how all the supplies. Because what you have to understand is if you don't have a supply, the closest hardware store is an hour away at best case scenario with traffic and the roads and everything. So his main goal is we got to get this thing complete. The last thing he wants to do is leave an incomplete building and just give any bad taste of this experience to them. So when we were almost done with the job, we had about an hour or so left before we were going to finish on our last day. We realized, you can see in the top right picture of that building that's missing a piece of the roof. I don't know if you can see that in the picture. They're basically tin slats that are on there, and we realized we were too short. And he did not have enough time to go to the hardware store, which he didn't even know sold. Sometimes they have them, sometimes they don't. So he's like, what am I going to do? So he told us later, he went out in his car, and he prayed. He was like, God, somehow I need 2 tin slats of roof. So he prayed. He drove down the road, which, houses aren't real close to each other like they are here. And he remembered there was a construction project down the road that he had seen been taking place. He stopped and he talked to the person there. And the person said, look, the owner isn't here. I don't know what he has, but here's his phone number. He called once, no answer, twice, no answer. I think a third or fourth try, he finally got the guy. He was like hours away. He said, look, this is what I'm doing. We're building a children's church. We are 2 tin pieces short of a roof. Do you happen to have any? And the guy says, well, I do. He says, I saw a bunch of gringos. That's what they call the white people there. I saw a bunch of gringos doing a job there. I had no idea what they were doing. But I'll tell you, he says, well, look, we'll pay you for them. We'll go buy new ones and we'll replace them a week from now or whatever. And the guy said, I'll tell you what, take 2 of them, and this will be a donation to the church. So we were able to finish the roof, and then, if you can see in the center part of the peak of the roof, I'm not a construction guy, bridge point, there you go, ridge cap. Okay, a recap. There's a piece of metal that goes on there, and they measured that it would take 6 of those to go from one end to the other. We counted 5. Second person counted 5. I don't remember how many people counted. There were 5. So we put them up on the roof, and Shane and the most fair-skinned ginger that we could find to get up on a metal roof in a sunny day, they got up there. They put the first one on, the second one on, the third one on, the fourth one on, the fifth one on, and there was a 6th one. Don't know where it came from. Fishes, loaves of bread. I don't know what it was. But I'm telling you, that thing was counted. There was 5, and when they completed, they had all 6. So that was just a couple, absolute miracles, from I think it's biblical to build on a good foundation, is it? Starting with something that we weren't expecting to do and making sure that this building's going to last forever for these kids. I don't know how many people got saved or if anyone got saved while we were there, but I know futures will enjoy that building and grow up children that will get saved because that building's not going anywhere because it's built on a great foundation and it's built properly and it will not get eaten by the bugs and the bats and all that good stuff. So again, what Dan said, every penny you spend back there for your meals, coming to the comedy nights, the golf alley, everything that we do, all of that, you weren't there in Costa Rica, but you were there because you helped. So thank you.
And you may wonder, how did we get that picture? Well, we had Ken shimmy up a coconut tree. Ken right here. No, Don brought a drone. Little kids love seeing that drone fly around, but we got that picture. But anyways, we finished the building. We slapped on the door, very sturdy door. We finished the bathrooms. You can see put a brand new coat of paint. It was pink, now they're blue. They picked out that color, and then we put our footprint in the sand, so to speak. Celebration 2020, Dillsburg, PA, USA. So if we ever go back, you go there, you'll see that there to God's glory for sure. We finished the building. We went inside for a dedication. It was so awesome, and we prayed an anointing and a blessing over the pastor. That's Pastor Juan. He pastors that church. Beautiful people. And then we stood outside and had a great picture just commemorating the hard work. And again, together, everyone achieves more. None of us could have done that on our own. We worked together so well, put such a wonderful team together. Yes, Deanna?
I forgot the other thing that we did. A bunch of ladies stayed in one day at the house, and Nicole had gotten a flannel board, and she had hundreds, thousands of pieces, and us ladies cut those all out, and she's trying to get one to every group or every church so that they can tell their Bible stories. So that was fun.
That was cool. After every day, we'd go back to the facility where we were staying at just a little retreat house, a nice river there, and we would take, some of us would jump in and take baths. I took 5 stream baths, and Connie never kicked me out of the bed all week long. So I had soap. I used soap. Don had a hard time standing up, but and some people stayed in tents. It was pretty rustic in that way, but they had a lot of courage. Anyways, we finished the project, and one of the things we did was we did a church service when we first got there, and I was able to do some gospel allusions and had some fun with the kids doing some tricks, and they just loved that. They were kind of mesmerized by all that. Preached a strong word on healing that through an interpreter. That's Pastor Tim. Connie and I got a chance to sing, which is always fun to do. And then we had an altar call, and people came forward. And the missionary tells us they haven't, that those people are very reserved, very conservative, and to see all the people, most of the ladies coming forward for prayer for healing was so amazing. So we prayed for them. We blessed the children. And some of the ladies especially, sorry, I'm going through these quick. If you want to jump in, you can. But some of the ladies just really helped pray for some of the women, and there's Dennis giving one of the brothers
This
a
lady
hug.
that, she was very reserved at first, and they prayed for her, and I was standing behind her, and then she just started crying, and so I put my arms around her. I don't know how long we stood there. She just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed, and apparently it was something to do with some kind of abuse that she was being healed from.
Yeah, just amazing time being with them. So, anyways, that was the wrap up of that trip, and I'm just so proud of each and every one of you. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I'd just like to go back to like the palm tree. If you pull up that picture, any of the palm trees would
Okay.
work. So there in Costa Rica, there's two types of palm trees. The one is the coconut palm tree. The other is the date palm tree. So whenever they would go up to get date palms, which we didn't actually see the process, they'd have to have 3 people involved. One to knock the dates off, one to kill all the rats that would come up, and one to kill the snakes that would come up
To eat the rats.
to eat the rats.
And Mark Wenwick ran into a 2-step snake, they call it. You only get 2 steps after it bites you. It's called the 2-step snake. Yeah. They went on a fishing trip at night, machete fishing. They do machete fishing. So, I mean, there's all kinds of cool things, experiences that we had. But I'm so proud of each. One
Sorry,
more?
Just one more. We had one bus driver all week. He was from San Jose and then drove us 5 hours out to where we were. That was his only job. He worked harder than the rest of us. I mean, he was a large man, and he just worked and worked and worked and worked. And it was just amazing to see everybody pitch in. I mean, he could have literally just sat in an air-conditioned bus all week, and he was out there sweating like the rest of us.
That's right. And Don was goofing off.
You
Here's a
know,
little-
I just have to say
Okay.
that there are so many parallels with being there and yet in our everyday life. And we just encourage you all with that as well. Because when you wake up and your only mission is to serve, not to be served, this spiritual principle comes back that you can't outgive God. It doesn't make sense because, you know, it was really hot. Like, I was like, this is Africa hot. Like, you lay down at night, there's no air conditioning anymore. In fact, it's all open to the sky, and you're just, like, wet. Feel like you just got out of the shower. You're like, Lord, at some point, please just, like, cool this body down, you know. And you think to yourself, but I don't even care about that. It feels so good to serve. And we had this one lady, the sisters that were preparing food or whatever. She says, well, I don't cook, but I can bless the ladies on this trip. So every day we'd get back, and you're pretty spent because it's really hot, and you're just going all day. We would, like, eat breakfast at 6 and be on the bus to work by 6:45 in the morning all day, and the heat. And then we'd get back, and she would be waiting for the ladies to just give us a foot massage to just de-stress. And we were like, no, we're here to serve. But, like, you can't outgive God, and God just keeps pouring back in. And it was just a beautiful thing. So I know when each one of us wake up every day, our mission is how can we serve? How can we be the hands and feet of Jesus that loves on people with no expectation, no waiting in return for what is going to come. God takes care of that. We just take care of our part. And so we're just so encouraged. God is going to do something amazing this entire year through every single life in this place. We know he's doing it ours because we encountered God in that way, but I believe it for everyone here as well.
Everybody turn your head like this. Turn your head like this, okay? Everybody? Okay, you're going to hear from Tim and Nicole, the missionaries. Okay, so, yep. Oh, do it like this.
Celebration Community Church, we're just so thankful you guys came to Costa Rica and invested in the indigenous community and built a new Sunday school classroom and fellowship hall for our needy church. Thank you for your investment in the kingdom of God.
And please come back again real soon, everyone.
We love y'all.
Okay, turn your head back so you don't get a crick in your neck. Okay.
Hey, Pastor Mike and Connie Hammer and Celebration Community Church, we're just so thankful. Hey, Pastor.
Encourage you in the future. You can see all ages, all shapes and sizes, good looking, not so good looking. But don't don't think for a second that we're all perfect up here and we're better than you and you can't go because you're not perfect. That we're all living life. We're all, just like you guys. Believe me, there's situations that, nobody knows about up here. But we're all strengthened and we're all growing through this trip. And we would love to have everybody join us at one point in time. So if you've ever considered it, be encouraged by these stories. Talk to me, talk to Shane, talk to anybody up here. And we would love to have you join us sometime soon.
Thank you, team. You can have a seat. Give me just a few more moments as we wrap up this service. God bless you. Let's give them a hand. Say, come. We were involved in building that children's church building, investing in the next generation. We have a generation right in this church here that are getting on fire for God and for missions. Pastor Luke, come with a couple of your students and just share briefly on what God has been stirring in your hearts.
Awesome. Hey, man, just listening to everything that's happening from that missions trip and then me knowing what's going on in the youth group as well just stirs something up because there's a missions movement that's taking place in our church that's just incredible. We got back from winter camp, like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, and there was 3 camps. And at our camp, we had, I think, like 7 of our students get called to be full-time missionaries. So this means like they're not just going on a trip, but like they feel called to stay in a country as a missionary. So that just blew my mind. Not only that, at each week of camp, they had all of the students set goals to give to this ministry called Speed the Light. And Speed the Light is trying this year to build wells in Africa. They're trying to raise I think $50,000 puts in a well. I can't remember the exact numbers, but regardless, they're putting wells in Africa. And week 1 of camp set a goal of $30,000. Week 2 of camp set a goal of $29,000. And then our week, with just our students alone, our students set a goal by themselves of $30,000. So that just blew my mind. Now, the thing is that's just a goal. So now we're trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? Students, are you actually going to save your money and give towards this? We had one student saying that she was going to start walking dogs in her community and save all the money and give it to Speed the Light. So it's just really neat, this fire that's really being birthed in our Students for Missions. And Abby Tilton is one of our students that feels called to be a full-time missionary. And we thought it'd be really neat for you to share with everybody about that calling.
So at Nationals, Eric Huffman, who is the Speed Delight director, he said if you know that you are called to be a missionary, that there was like a bunch of places on the screens. And he said whenever God tells you which place you're supposed to go find that sign. And my place was Asia Pacific, and it was just crazy because I was like kind of like, is this really like you, God, or is this just like what I want to do? But like that was like clarification for me. And at winter retreat, I was asking God, like, what can I do now to just start being a missionary now? And he told me that I can be a missionary on my sports teams and, like, just that everyone around me is my mission field. And that I should be, right now, I can't wait until I'm older to share the love of God to the people around me, because who am I to keep that away from them?
Yeah, that's awesome, Abby. And then we have another Abby here. This is Abby Klinger. And Abby, just last week, this awesome story happened. And Abby right now is taking place in advancing the gospel, doing missions work in her own school. And Abby, why don't you go ahead and tell them the story about what you're doing?
So at summer camp, God revealed to me a vision, and it was me walking into my school, and there was light around me, and all around me was darkness. And he was just explaining to me that I go to a broken school and that the people there don't know Christ. And so he was like, I'm going to use you to show the people there Christ. And from September through December, I was just growing in a relationship with him, and he was just giving me a boldness and a compassion for the students at my school. And when a retreat, there was a service, and Peter Reeves, I think his name was, he was explaining like how to share with your friends, and he was talking about like you need one friend, and I want you to call their name out, and then you need to like talk to them about Christ. And so I said my friend's name, and I was like, God, I need you to help me with her, because this is like, I couldn't picture her coming to church. I was like, this is scary. And so he gave me the boldness, and Monday that I walked into into school, I walked into the bathroom and she was right there. And I was like, oh, hey, like, what's going on? And she was like, hey, and I was like, did you want to go to church with me this Sunday? And she was like, yeah, I'd love to. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And so I ended up bringing her and 3 other friends, and both her and another friend accepted Christ on past Sunday. And then tonight I should be bringing around 7 friends, so I'll be praying for that.
Awesome, Abby. That's so cool. So you were praying for one friend, and you got 4 friends to come out, and then 2 of them gave their life to Jesus. That's just awesome. Yeah. And then I also just wanted to share, like, that's what's happening with them, with what you share with what's happening with the team. Like, we all have a place in this missions movement that's going on. So, yeah.
Thank you, students. Thank you, Pastor Luke. Why don't you stand with me today? We're going to pray a dismissal prayer in just a moment, but maybe you're here today, and I'm going to invite the prayer team to come up forward. And Leo, if you'd come to the keyboard. And maybe you're here today, and like the walls of Jerusalem. Come on, prayer team, come up right now, stand up here. And maybe your life is broken. Maybe there's some things happening, some broken relationships, a marriage. Maybe you just have been beaten down, tired, wanting to quit, wanting to give in. Would you let the faith of these that went to another country to build and to fortify the church of God in another part of the world encourage you today that your life is not beyond repair? Even if the foundation has been shaking and falling apart, God can make a way. He's the way maker. He can build your life better than anybody else can, but you have to put your trust in Him. Father, pray a blessing upon this church. Those that maybe are going through something and they feel like they're all alone. May this message from fellow congregants about teaming up with one another, cooperating with each other, working with each other, coming alongside each other, Lord, may that be an encouragement to let them know there's community here. There's people who love and care and just will open up their hearts to each other, Father. I thank you, God, for what you did through our missions team and what you're doing for our students and our youth, Father. May it just continue. May that fire just begin to rage and to spread, Lord, so that this community, there be many more salvations that we experience every week. So, Lord, we thank you for what you're doing in our midst. And I pray a blessing upon this congregation. Give us a powerful week, not by might, not by power, but by your Spirit. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. If you have to go, if you want to stick around a little bit longer and pray, you're welcome to do that. Have a great week.